Hey everybody, I hope you're doing great today. Today, I wanted to talk to you briefly about why Xactimate isn't your problem. I hear this all the time. I think I can help you work it out. Let's do it. Hey everybody, as I was saying that I wanted to talk about this issue that we have with Xactware. A lot of people think that the problems they have with getting the prices that they want is an Xactimate problem. Let's look at this and let's understand it better. Xactware is a guide. It's designed to be middle of the market. Most of the pricing that comes from Xactware are things that are processed through Xactanalysis. So if you've never done it, and if you were to complete an estimate and to send that estimate down the line, that's going to generate something in a database that shows what was paid for a certain line item. So the the preponderance of what that is program contractors and insurance adjusters, mostly IAs. It is fair to say that over 70% of the sway on where that pricing is, specifically for labor really on this, but over 70% of that is from people who pass things through Xactanalysis. And Xactanalysis, if you're doing something through Xactanalysis, as a general rule, you are doing something for the carrier. I'm not saying the carrier is evil. I'm not saying the carrier is trying to screw you. I am, however, saying that the carrier's captive numbers are the numbers that are being used to basically perpetuate a certain price on the estimates. So if there is a particular problem where a program contractor is being paid by service level agreement, is being paid less for a certain item, not being paid overhead and profit on an item, or any number of different sequence that could happen there, or if an adjuster is just possibly pulling someone that's a program contractor into jobs so that the jobs that are getting estimated through that program contractor are just lower than the market, then it's just perpetuating that. So all of a sudden you come along and you say that painting doesn't cost 64 cents a square foot, it costs $1.10 a square foot. And you think that because it says 64 cents in Xactware for doing that work in Baltimore or Houston or wherever, lots of people go and create the fiction that number that they put on the estimate or in the pricing database, that's somehow gospel. So let me give you an example of something that I routinely do whenever I have to do expert witness work. When I do expert witness work, they're going to say this at some point in the game. They're going to say, "So David, tell us how you manipulated the Xactimate program." And I simply respond with the same thing always. I did not manipulate the Xactimate program. I acted as an estimator while using the Xactimate program. Because Xactware's own documents say that it is ultimately the responsibility of the estimator to note value, market conditions, and other complexities that will cause the pricing to change on a particular line item or on a lot of line items. Even Xactware says that an estimator is ultimately the greatest authority on what that is. That the pricing is just a guide. Now, when you simply run through Xactware and price and price and price and price and price, let's talk about something super simple. Let's say you're doing roofing, and a lot of you are going to know this. Under the roofing work, you're going to do the demo, which is going to be taking that roof off of the existing structure. That's going to come over as a DMO or demo tag. So that's going to be some of your cheapest labor that's going to bring that roof down. When in fact, you can't put that demo guy on the roof, if you're the contractor, without paying the insurance rates that you pay for the roofer. And consequently, it's the roofer that does that job. It's not regular demo labor. So that switch by itself, that one little thing, that will usually swing the job a good 10%, just because, on a roofing estimate anyway, just because you did what was proper and not what was just easy. The other thing we have is a lot of times the insurance companies and insurance adjusters, I'm not banging on you, I'm simply saying there's some things that are riddled in your game that sometimes really get in the way of some other people in the game. I often get these totally rectified in appraisal because nobody really believes them. They just happen to get in the system. And Zig Ziglar used to talk about a story about having to cut the end off of a ham every time they got it, and he didn't understand why perfectly good meat was cut off of the ham. And so they called his wife's grandmother or mother and said, why do we cut it off? She says, because grandmother did that. They called the grandmother, and the grandmother said, well, I only cut it because the pan was too short. So in the same way, some things just get into the system. It just gets to be a ghost in the machine that makes things go terribly wrong. But one of those things is when you look at Xactware, when you're putting in all the loss information, there's a tag there that says, you click it on for non-material depreciation. Now that's a fancy way of saying depreciating labor. So you get a job, real simple. You have a job, say from the contractor's perspective, PA, attorney, whoever. You've got an estimate here which says that the paint on the wall is depreciated by 40%. And so let's just assume for the second that the system was paying $10 an hour for the painter, and now the depreciation takes it and makes it $6 an hour. And the insured's going to normally have to incur that because that's what it happens in most places, as I understand it. And in a lot of times when you're working, and a lot of you guys know this that do the job, sometimes you run into a job where they only get ACV, which means they only get the depreciated value. So if you allow that to be in your estimate, it'll sometimes default to that, and so you're actually doing that in your own estimate, you're actually screwing yourself in that regard, and you should stop that. There's one other thing that you can do that I try to teach people to do all the time. They don't teach this really a whole lot, okay? In any kind of Xactware training, because as near as I can tell, the genesis of how this happened was after Hurricane Katrina, there were a bunch of attorneys generals, I think Louisiana, Alabama, maybe Florida, I'm not sure, had sued Xactware for essentially price fixing. And in their answer to that, even though they won the lawsuit, as far as I could tell, I didn't spend a lot of time on this. I've always been interested in how this came about. So, but what they did have to do is they had to change the way the components tab essentially worked on Xactware. where you could actually go in and deal with dependencies. And in those dependencies, you can have a very rational discussion with your pricing to understand where you've got labor burden and where you've got higher price or lower price. So what they did was they absolved this saying that that it was price fixing when they gave you a manner to do it that had allowed you to fix the price easily without setting off any alarms. I mean, pretty smart. I mean, it's risk management. That's all they were doing. But they don't really train this. And I'm going to show you an example of this. What I'm going to show you is a real quick overview of 1 hour, 4 hours, and 4 hour and no labor burden. You can see on here with no labor burden, 230,000 all the way up to 496,000 with 4 hours with the labor burden. That's labor burden meaning every day. All we're going to go into this is just go in dependencies and supporting events. And this will look very confusing to you. And it could be in some ways. I'm going to link a tutorial on how to do this in the notes for those of you that are interested. But in a nutshell, if you add labor time to each trade that is affected by that labor time, then what you have effectively done is you've allowed the actual price the contractor is ultimately going to see in the market to be addressed in the estimate, which after all is the greatest function of the estimator. You can literally do this with every trade, or if there was just one or two trades where it affected, maybe they had to come from out of town, maybe they had to do something else. There are so many ways that this can work for you. If you have a situation where the dumpster has to sit 150 yards down the hill on the road because you're working on the structure and you can't put it in the parking lot or can't put it in the yard or whatever. They can't put the dumpster there. So you have to hand carry all that debris. You've got to carry it to the dumpster. That's a market condition, a labor dependency issue. That means you're going to literally pay guys who are normally going to just be tossing something in the can to literally go down the hill and back and down the hill and back. And we got to figure out what that is. You know, when we work on a really large structure, we'll literally take somebody and give them 20, 30 pounds worth of something and get them to leave the parking lot, go to the first floor, second floor, third floor, on up the line. And what we find is if we'll do that, we can figure out the burden that somebody has for just climbing that into those higher elevations of that building and what that means to the overall budget of the job. I can't express this to you enough. You're not screwing anybody by doing it correctly. You're just simply doing it correctly. I spend a very large amount of my life valuing losses, coming up with the value of something and being able to advocate for it. You got to remember on things like pretty much any peril. You know, during Hurricane Michael, I did a white paper that showed the variable cost in the market just because there weren't but two ways to get in there, and their labor wasn't there and the hotels weren't there, and it was just hard. And so it made construction 1.9, 2.1. I mean, it literally just doubled it in almost doubled it in most cases. It's crazy. But all that was legitimate. It was absolutely legitimate. That's why we saw people where carriers came back on one, I remember the carrier came back at $49,000 for a roof, and they ultimately paid $89,000 for the roof because straight up the market conditions, legitimate cost for laborers, legitimate cost for personnel, and you see this over and over and over and over and over again. My point to you is simply this: Xactware is not your problem. The lack of the ability to manipulate the software in the proper manner to express the actual price is the biggest problem. There are guys in the industry that do nothing. We write for a lot of them in my business where people actually send us the database that they've altered to their contracted rates, specifically in mitigation and remediation. And that's another way to do this. But if you ever do this on your estimate, just make sure that you are explaining in simple language why you did what you did. Because the goal of the entire process is not to make, mystery to be margin, but in reality, to make transparency margin. Because there is nothing wrong with you making a living doing the good work that you do. There is something profoundly wrong in anybody asking you to do something where you're going to lose money without your will to do so. We all do some charity work in everything we do, but that's a voluntary function, not a mandated function. That's the same way that you have to follow certain law and ordinance principles, where you have to do certain things on a roof, or certain things for electrical, or certain things for footers, or certain things for bricks. It doesn't matter what it is. There's always something. And if you will write that down that you have to do, it's reasonable, because you're being transparent, to show that you have to do it because you are regulated to do so. I can't force you, if I was contracting with you on anything else in the world, to ask you to do something illegal. Guys, Xactimate is not your problem. The lack of the ability to use the software as it should be is the problem. There is nothing stronger in the industry than to give somebody an insurance estimate that's in Xactimate, because it's a language that the entire industry knows. You can do this. You can call us for help. It doesn't matter. I really just want you to understand that one thing, that if you'll look at the details and look at what the real price is for you, your entire game should change. Guys, I hope you're having a great day. I am trying to get done with this one really big loss so I could show you some things about it. But we're still not quite done, and I can't show it until we're done and settled with my client. So it was just kind of exciting stuff. So, but I'll be in touch very soon. And, I just got to say this. So many of you reach out, and so many of you say such nice things to me for doing these things that I don't think anybody would ever listen to. And I'm grateful, but I'm more than anything, I'm just amazed at the massive amount of work that the people in our industry do. I call it the claims tribe for a reason, because it's just straight up magic. I mean, it is just amazing from end to end, just how completely we touch so many lives. I'll bet you, if you looked in your game and really tried to do some calculations on what you did in the last 6-8 months, I'll bet you'd find that you brought more joy to more people than you could ever imagine. And if we can make a living and do good work at the same time, we literally did win. Have a great day. Peace.